kids. Right on.
What kind of shocking drama was going on inside that house on the hill? And why did a daughter decide to turn on her mother?
I know I did the right thing, and I'd have done it over again.
Connie Chung with amazing new details about a kind of civil war inside a family. What happened? And what was the consequence?
Add George Clooney to the long list of people angry at Bill O'Reilly. O'Reilly admits he's obnoxious. He says he asks what you want to know. So what if he's rude to his guests?
Who cares what they think? That makes me a bulletproof interviewer.
Chris Cuomo goes head-to-head with Bill O'Reilly.
Here I am, Cuomo. Let me have it.
And now from Times Square, Diane Sawyer and Charles Gibson.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Primetime.
No matter who you are, if you live or work in a high-rise building, the chances are you have thought a lot in recent days about how you'd get out if you had to in an emergency. Tonight, for the first time, exclusive video images taken from police helicopters that were circling the Twin Trade Center towers after the attack on September 11th. And these questions: wasn't there another way out? Couldn't the helicopters have tried rooftop rescues? Chris Cuomo now brings us the images and the story from the top of the towering inferno.
The horror of September 11th from above. Video shot from a police rescue helicopter, given exclusively by the NYPD to Primetime.
If you could plan, the absolute worst case scenario high-rise mission, you had it on 9/11. There were numerous secondary explosions taking place in that building. There were continuous explosions.
We're looking at probably 15 to 20 stories burning simultaneously at probably well over 1,000 degrees, if not more.
Lieutenant Glenn Daly and Officer Timothy Hayes are pilots for the NYPD aviation unit. Just minutes after the blast, Hayes is in the first helicopter over the scene.
Immediately, the high-rise rescue plan was going into effect. The smoke had covered 90% of the entire roof, so I couldn't even see the roof to make an evaluation of where we could go.
But Hayes hopes he can find a way, some way, to manage a daring rescue. From the ground, it seems an aerial rescue could work. After all, our memories are etched with scenes of heroism in the air, rescue helicopters swooping in, effortlessly it seemed, saving lives. A rooftop evacuation from a fire consuming the MGM Grand Hotel in Las Vegas. A worker trapped atop a crane in Atlanta, plucked from the sky. And in Los Angeles, as an office building was in flames, 8 people with nowhere else to go were flown to safety. Chief Paul Shakestad of the LA Fire Department's aviation unit was there.
Our helicopters put teams on the roof that can go in through the top, the uninvolved portion of the building, and do search and rescue or some limited firefighting.
Shakestad's unit took Primetime along for a training run.
Position's good.
They use hoists to lower specially trained firefighters down to rooftops and harnesses to bring victims back up. But Shakestad and other fire experts warn roof rescue isn't the best option.
So the priority is still to go down.
Vince Dunn, a former deputy chief in the New York Fire Department, told us if you're in a burning high-rise office building, going to the roof is one of the worst things you can do.
We want people to get below the fire. Our strategy is to bring people down below the fire. If you're 1 floor below the fire, you're safe. The most dangerous place you can be is above a fire, in a stairway or in a hallway. Heat, smoke, and flame rise.
Now, why is it wrong to think, hey, if there's a fire like the World Trade Center and there are all these people trying to get down, I'll just go to the roof. That's the safest place.
It's not easy to get up to a roof of a building. Many stairways do not go to the roof, and you may get trapped in that stairway that dead ends.
That's why the fire evacuation plans for the World Trade Center never included a rooftop escape. True, after the 1993 basement garage bombing, a small number of people who were unable to negotiate the staircases were rescued from the roof. But on the worst September morning in history, everything was different.
There are high-rise fires, and then there are 9/11. A typical high-rise fire creates a lot of heat and creates a lot of smoke. Add to that scenario hundreds of thousands of pounds of jet fuel as an accelerant to the fire. Multiply the heat factor. Something that helicopters don't like is heat. So now you've got the worst of all possible situations playing themselves out.
One of the first calls I got was from people on the ground calling us to immediately check the roof. I said there was a corner from where the wind was blowing from that was partially open, but it was still covered in smoke, and there was numerous obstructions. I said, Pat, this is impossible. This is undoable. I can't see the roof.
Yet still, one police chopper tries repeatedly to get into position to land or drop someone in, but it can't.
To give you an idea of what it was like to fly above the World Trade Center, they were at 1,700 feet. Even on normal days, you had swirling wind conditions and thermal wind currents, which made it very difficult to navigate.
People may have in their mind's eye a view of this pristine roof. Salvation. Those roofs were totally compromised and choked with thick, acrid black smoke, intense heat coming up from the fire.
Hayes and his crews circle the towers, desperate for an opportunity, unaware they're in grave danger just being in the air.
I caught out of my eye an airplane, and I turned to Pat, my pilot, and I said, Pat, I said, Jesus Christ, I said, there's a second plane crashing. And then as I turned back to the left again, I realized how close it was coming to us. I started to yell at Pat to climb, because I felt it was going to impact our aircraft. So we climbed, he went underneath us, and next thing I knew, I watched it impact the South Tower.
But Hayes says the most wrenching feeling for him is knowing people are trapped, people he can't reach. You could look in the windows, you could see people.
Yeah, yeah. I try not to remember that, but yeah, you can see people, yes.
And that's got to make it more difficult when you have to decide not to go in.
Yeah, thinking as a cop, you know, maybe I would have ran into that burning building knowing that I'm never going to come out. But as an aviator, you're responsible now for 6 people on board that aircraft. I can't make the decision for 6 other lives and 6 other families.
Because if there's any way you could have, when you were looking at those people, you would have done it. Is that true?
We would have tried. But if me trying to help people is going to kill more people on board my helicopter, if that helicopter, God forbid, falls to the ground, you have to say, we have to weigh the options and say, you know what, this isn't going to work. We're going to cause more problems than good right now.
Was there ever a moment that either of you or anyone else that you know of questioned whether or not the right call was made to land on that roof?
Never. Never.
When you're flying around the World Trade Center that morning, did you ever see people on the roof?
No, never. We looked. The South Tower was totally obscured. We couldn't see the roof at all. The North Tower, there was nobody on the roof.
And why didn't anyone make it to that roof? The only staircase leading there may have been destroyed, filled with smoke or fire. Maybe they couldn't open the door that led to the roof, a door that was usually locked to protect vital communications equipment. But there were people working in close proximity who had keys. And the Port Authority says there's no evidence that anyone was even close to that door. We may never know for sure, but what we do know is that despite the most effective evacuation effort in anyone's recent memory, 20,000 people were saved. There were those who were trapped, above the fire and out of reach of the helicopters. As a human being, what's the impact on you when you first noticed exactly how devastating it was?
It was, I never felt so helpless and guilty before in my life. And when we get there with these millions of dollars worth of equipment, and there was absolutely nothing we could do, because it was nothing, we couldn't get to that roof. We couldn't get people out of that building. So it was one of the worst feelings I felt, you know, I've ever felt.
It's gone! The whole tower!
And then, the final shock for the pilots.
Another one's gonna go!
So close, and yet, as the towers came down, despite all their training, all their courage, all they could do was watch in stunned disbelief.
We're about the whole North Towers now.
What's wrong with this picture? A man with a suitcase. But look what's inside. A small nuclear bomb. This one isn't real, but the threat is.
How real is the threat that bin Laden could get his hands on nuclear material?
Dirty Weapons, when Primetime returns. Friday, right, wrong.
Do you think there are bad people in the world?
Yes.
Good, evil.
You're sure of that?
Yeah.
How do you explain this to children? Maybe they can explain it to you.
Kind of like they have a small heart.
You can learn a lot from a child, and Friday you will. This is America 01. Primetime continues. Once again, Charles Gibson.
Earlier this evening, President Bush took steps to reassure Americans about homeland security and our safety. That after he began the week raising the specter of something truly terrifying, that Osama bin Laden and his al-Qaeda network are trying to put their hands on nuclear weapons.
They're seeking chemical, biological, and nuclear weapons. Given the means, our enemies would be a threat to every nation and eventually to civilization itself.
There's no evidence that terrorists have a nuclear bomb, but intelligence sources say bin Laden has repeatedly tried to buy nuclear weapons, some small and easily transportable. Brian Ross investigates what some are calling dirty bombs.
It's only a mock-up, but just the prospect of something like this has a lot of people in Washington now truly worried.
I could not imagine a more troubling situation than to have something like this in the hands of a terrorist.
This is a so-called nuclear suitcase, or at least what Congressman Curt Weldon says one might look like. A small, portable, easily concealed, but still highly devastating nuclear weapon.
This device that I have was actually built for me by a former CIA agent.
Based, according to the congressman, who we talked with on a New York-Washington hookup, on some of the known specifications of both Russian and U.S. tactical nuclear weapons.
The critical material would be inside of this gun device. There would be a neutron generator. There would be a battery device for power, a switching mechanism to arm it. I mean, this kind of a device could destroy a major sports stadium filled with tens of thousands of people.
And as we saw, with Congressman Weldon's aide carrying the mock-up briefcase through the halls of Congress, it's not something likely to raise much suspicion, although it would never get through the Capitol's metal detectors. While there's no evidence such a device has been smuggled into the country, and many experts say it would be extremely difficult for terrorists to trigger it, Congressman Weldon, who's been following this for years, says there's no doubt that such nuclear suitcases do actually exist.
The defense minister of Russia told me to my face, yes, Congressman, we built these devices, just as your country built them during the Cold War.
In fact, the U.S. Department of Defense made a training video in the 1960s,
separating the munition from the jumper,
now declassified, demonstrating how what are called small atomic demolition munitions can be stuffed into parachutes attached to U.S. Navy commandos, who then show how the weapons can be used underwater to attack bridges and ships.
We destroyed ours. Now the question is, do we know whether or not Russia had them all accounted for? And do we know that they destroyed them all?
This week in Moscow, Russian President Putin told 2020's Barbara Walters none of the nuclear suitcases are missing.
I don't really believe this is true. These are just legends. One can probably assume that somebody tried to sell some nuclear secrets, but there is no documentary confirmation of those developments.
But Congressman Weldon says he got a much different answer 4 years ago when he went to talk with one of Russia's top generals.
He said, when I was Yeltsin's top defense advisor, he tasked me with accounting for 132 suitcase-size nuclear bombs. He said we could only locate 48. And we said, well, where are the rest, General? He said, I have no idea.
You're saying 86 are missing?
That's right.
And that's just one of several nuclear scenarios now causing great concern at the White House, where this week, officials sought advice from the man who tracked nuclear weapons for the last administration, Dr. Graham Allison, now a Harvard professor.
Dr. Allison, how real is the threat that bin Laden could get his hands on nuclear material?
Well, sadly, I think it's real. And would bin Laden do that? In a heartbeat, if he could. I think if you look at the indictment of bin Laden and his associates for the 1998 bombing of the U.S. embassies in Africa, the U.S. Justice Department indicts bin Laden specifically and al-Qaeda for seeking nuclear weapons and weapons-usable materials since 1992.
But Dr. Allison and most other experts say the most immediate concern is not the suitcase, but a thriving black market in nuclear materials in places such as Istanbul, where just this week, 2 men were arrested trying to sell stolen, enriched uranium.
There is a black market in weapons-grade uranium. There is a black market for weapons-grade plutonium.
And there certainly is a market for radioactive material in general.
Dr. Friedrich Steinhausler of the University of Salzburg in Austria, one of the world's preeminent experts on the illegal market in nuclear materials, says his real concern is that bin Laden would use what's called a dirty bomb, a conventional weapon laced with radioactive material.
In terms of probability of threat, I would put the nuclear bomb rather low. I would put the radioactive dirty bomb much, much higher.
Dr. Steinhausler says a dirty bomb would make a scene like that of the World Trade Center even worse, if such a thing could be imagined.
Picture the bucket brigades that we saw in Ground Zero. In a radioactive contaminated area, they couldn't operate there. Picture the dust-caked office worker who survived the World Trade Center attack. He would not only be covered in dust from the detonation, he would have inhaled radioactive dust. His body would be contaminated. If you can make your conventional explosive to lace it with radioactivity is really child's play.
Overflights by special surveillance aircraft of the bin Laden training camps in Afghanistan have not picked up the presence of any radioactive material. But bin Laden, when asked by ABC News on Christmas Eve of 1998 whether he had acquired nuclear weapons, gave this troubling answer.
I would state that to acquire weapons in defense of Muslims is a religious duty.
And given that kind of talk, American authorities say the many nuclear scenarios, including the nuclear suitcase, simply cannot be ruled out for a group whose members are ready to kill themselves.
Up until now, we had built-in safety barriers. We now know the terrorist himself is ready to die. And if he dies crushing an aircraft into a building, or if he's ready to die carrying highly radioactive material, there's not much difference.
As we said, there is no evidence that Osama bin Laden has acquired any nuclear weapons or material, but authorities are convinced that he and his terrorist network are doing everything in their power to get them.
A house on the hill, under siege, 5 armed children barricaded inside.
The first thing I thought was, God dang, those are my kids. Yeah, right on.
A children's war in Idaho. For the first time, what was going on inside. And later, Bill O'Reilly. What is it that makes him so popular? When Primetime returns. Primetime continues. Once again, Diane Sawyer.
What does it take to break a family bond? To make a daughter go so far as turn her mother into the authorities? For the first time tonight, the untold story behind a remarkable event. You remember the headlines. A handful of armed children holed up inside a house for days, keeping the entire world at bay. How did things come to that? Connie Chung has the startling new details about a mother, a daughter, and the family secrets.
For 5 days last spring in this house on a remote hill in the Idaho Panhandle, the country watched a standoff unfold. On one side, sheriff's deputies. On the other, a family of children, the youngest 8, the oldest 16, barricaded inside, armed with guns, and guarded by a pack of vicious dogs.
The apparently heavily armed children have been holed up alone inside.
Police here have backed off considerably. Increasingly delicate situation.
But the public didn't realize the confrontation was touched off by the children's oldest sister, 19-year-old Irina Magukin.
I know I did the right thing, and I'd have done it over again.
Irina had turned in her own mother. What were you telling authorities?
I was telling them that there was this huge case of neglect that had to be stopped.
Because of Irina's allegations, this mother of 7, Joanne Magukin, was in police custody, faced with felony counts of child endangerment, malnutrition, and unsanitary conditions. She watched as her younger children held police at bay.
Well, the first thing I thought was, God dang, those are my kids. Yeah, right on. I was so pea-picking proud of them.
Proud that her children had done what she taught them, resist authorities. Irina claims that's just one of many strange beliefs her mother imposed on the children. 2.5 months after the standoff, Irina took Primetime to the house on the hill where she grew up. She said it was much the same as it has been for years.
This is the girls' bedroom. And this was the boys' room. This is typical, very, very, very typical of the last 5 years, 6 years, very typical. These were the buckets we used for a toilet.
Irina describes the filth in which they lived. Rotting food, no running water, no phone, no heat, animal feces everywhere.
The real trick was walking through here in the middle of the night with no light, not cutting yourself on broken glass. We got really good at that.
Were there mice, rats?
Mice, oh yes, lots of mice. They would go underneath all of our sheets and our covers, and they'd run over our faces.
Do you think the kids knew that they were living in squalid conditions?
They didn't have a clue. It was normal for them.
Irina claims her mother grew increasingly paranoid, viewing outsiders as the enemy, especially the government. That was the reason she says her mother gave for insisting the family often go without electricity.
Because she felt that it brought bugs into the house that spied on the family, that the government was trying to spy on us and catch us in something.
It wasn't always like that. There was a time, friends say, when the family's life was normal. Joanne grew up an ordinary hometown girl, described by her friends as intelligent and witty. She met her husband Michael 20 years ago when he came to Idaho. Born the son of a prominent East Coast family, he was educated at elite schools, but turned his back on his privileged life. Instead, he traveled the country and eventually settled with Joanne on these isolated 40 acres in northern Idaho.
We loved each other dearly. We were absolutely dedicated to our lives together with the children, completely.
Back then, there were birthday parties. In this 1987 home video, the pretty little girl in the red dress is Irina. And then about 8 years ago, when their 7th child was born, Michael, who had multiple sclerosis, began deteriorating. Irina says that's when her mother started to unravel.
Dad was pretty much wheelchair bound. Mom really started breaking. She just could not take the responsibility of having 7 kids anymore. So when Jane was just born, I was 11, and my mom weaned her and gave her to me, an 8-month-old baby, and said, no, you take care of her.
Joanne Magukin admits she buckled under the stress of caring for not only the children, but her sick husband as well. They made a decision to lock out the world.
We kids only went to town once a year. The rest of the time we were at the house. Sometimes she wouldn't even let us outside. One winter we had 32 cats, 27 dogs, 3 goats, and a couple chickens in the house, plus all of us people.
The children were not allowed to have friends. Instead, they spent their days taking care of their beloved father.
It was hard in the winter times for my dad with no heat. We'd have to keep him all covered up with covers, and then he'd sweat, and we'd have to uncover him, and then he'd get cold, and we'd have to cover him again, and it was a very miserable existence for him. Very, very, very miserable.
How did conditions get so bad in your house?
Mom didn't care what the house looked like anymore.
Joanne claims the house wasn't this bad.
She just didn't care, and we took our cue from her, so we ended up not caring.
We did have a messy house, that's true, but we are fastidious in what we handled in our hygiene, because we took our time from Michael. We took care of him. The house can wait.
Why didn't anyone, friends, neighbors, Irina, call authorities?
Who was I going to call?
Would call the police.
But I didn't know that. The police were bad.
According to?
According to my mother, and that's what I'd been trained. The police were bad, they were going to kidnap me. All of our neighbors were cannibals and were going to eat all of us, so I got as paranoid as she was. I was scared, and I didn't know who to call. We'd been isolated so much, I didn't know who to place my trust in.
In fact, friends and neighbors did alert local officials. Prosecuting attorney Phil Robinson.
Here in this area, many people live in remote situations. They live in situations that look worse on the outside, probably than this does. And as long as there's nothing there to indicate that children are either being harmed or extremely likely to be harmed, we do not invade people's homes here.
The police kept coming up and telling me, oh, your neighbor said that we need to send health and welfare up here to take your children away from you because you're being such a rotten mom. And I'm sitting there going, check out, man, the road's over there. Maybe we don't need these neighbors.
But the stakes changed when a member of the family broke her long silence. Irina went to the authorities 2 days after her father died.
Her comment that day to me was that she just would not, now that her father was dead, allow her brothers and sisters to go on living like this.
Authorities now know they have to do something. But what? They first consider taking the children into custody while they're at their father's funeral, but that seems inhumane. Then, another plan.
Police lured the mother from the house, but no one was ready for what would happen next.
Ben begins to scream, lock down the house, get the guns, turn the dogs loose.
The standoff and a mother and daughter at war. When Primetime continues after this message and a word from our ABC stations. Here again, Charles Gibson.
After Irina Magukin tells the authorities what is going on inside the family home, police decide to get the other children out. The sooner the better. But they know it won't be easy. As Connie Chung picks up our story, a well-laid plan is about to backfire.
The task facing police was daunting. How to peacefully arrest the mother and take custody of the children. Police concocted a ruse. Lure Joanne Magukin out of the house to make a phone call about her Social Security check from the nearest village.
Next thing I know, I had every cop in the world, it seemed, down there. And I said, okay, fine. They put the cuffs on me.
Then a deputy goes to the house to get the children, telling them that their mother needs them in town. But he doesn't say the secret code words Joanne had taught her children to listen for. So as they've been trained, the children try to run back to the house. But the deputy grabs hold of Ben, age 15.
Ben begins to scream, lock down the house, get the guns, turn the dogs loose. The dogs come flying out of the house. 20 dogs are turned loose, and they begin to attack Deputy Tilson, who then pulls his gun and starts shooting at them.
Ben runs into the woods. Inside the house, the other 5 children hear those gunshots and think their brother has been killed. They lock themselves in, all in one room, and they are armed.
And they are truly terrified of what might happen to them if the government ever came. And now the government was there. The nightmare came true.
After a couple of nights in the woods, Ben comes out and is shocked to learn he's not under arrest. The standoff continues. Gunshots come from the house. Police ask Irina and the family priest to try to talk to the children.
And as they are shouting out, a news helicopter comes and nearly lands on the premises right next to the house. It was very horrible for the children. They expect to have people coming in from the government landing in helicopters.
Finally, on the 5th day, Ben agrees to go up to the house with Irina.
When I found them in that time, this curtain was closed. There was no sunlight coming in. The youngest was sleeping up there when I found them. 2 of the others are sleeping in the bathtub.
The children agreed to come out. They've been together in a foster home since then, shielded from media access. All criminal charges against Joanne Magukin have been dropped, but child protection issues still remain. The children will not be allowed to live with their mother until she agrees to participate in a state rehabilitation program, the details of which are confidential. So far, she has refused. We asked Joanne if she still loves the daughter who turned her in.
She is my daughter. She's my own flesh and blood. The love is unquestionable. That can never be compromised. The discipline is another issue. That we have to deal with.
Do you love your mother, or do you hate her?
Deep down inside, I love her very, very much. I just do not like her right now.
Do you think she now understands that she was neglecting her children?
Oh, Lord, no.
The children are now in school, the 4 younger ones for the first time. And Irina says they're doing well, but the older children are said to be having a harder time adjusting to the outside world.
Bill O'Reilly. He's been called an opinionated blowhard, and worse.
Has he created a currency in being a jerk?
Inside the no-spin zone, when Primetime returns. Primetime continues. And now, Diane Sawyer.
Imagine having a job where you're paid a lot of money to say anything you think about anybody you want and not worry about the consequences. Well, someone does have a job like that. Bill O'Reilly, the self-proclaimed pit bull of night talk shows on television. Just this week, he managed to infuriate someone else, actor George Clooney. And Chris Cuomo rejoins us now to turn the tables and put Bill O'Reilly on the hot seat.
Hi, I'm Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching us tonight in the midst
To the uninitiated, Bill O'Reilly could be just another middle-aged white guy on TV. Thinning hair fully maximized, makeup, tie perfectly knotted. That is, until he opens his mouth.
That's not anecdotal, this is fact. You don't know the difference between fact and anecdote. And Waxman wouldn't come on his program, by the way. He's gutless. You owe me an apology, your readers an apology. It was a dishonest column.
I'm Paul Revere, riding through your town saying, those idiots are coming after you.
The clarion call is sounded every weeknight on The O'Reilly Factor, the Fox News Channel show on which the host unloads on some of the biggest names in politics, punditry, and pop culture. He's been called arrogant, obnoxious, a know-nothing blowhard, and a whole lot worse.
With all due respect, I appreciate you coming on the program. But if I was the CIA, I'd follow you wherever you went.
Has he created a currency in being a jerk?
He's created a currency in not caring whether you call him a jerk. It's the opposite of what most people think talent is about. Talent is about wanting everybody to love them. Bill does not appear to have that need. He seems to have missed that gene.
Case in point, since the September 11th attacks, O'Reilly's been on his own crusade, blasting the big national charities for not getting money to survivors fast enough. And last week, he unleashed a blistering attack on Hollywood celebrities who appeared in fundraisers, but wouldn't talk to him about the alleged problems.
The majority of these people are phonies, much more interested in their own images than solving any social problems.
That drew a scathing letter from actor George Clooney, who participated in a historic multi-network telethon that raised $266 million for the September 11th fund. In the letter, he compares O'Reilly to Senator Joe McCarthy and writes, "Your accusation that the fund is being mishandled and misused is nothing short of a lie. The money is going out to the right people, and to make certain of this, the United Way is taking some time. That the United Way is taking its time is precisely O'Reilly's beef."
Charities. Many of the grieving families, most of the ones that we've spoken with, have heard nothing from the September 11th fund. Are you getting the picture here, George?
To borrow a phrase from Andy Warhol, O'Reilly is enjoying his 15 minutes, cashing in on a culture where negativity and anger seem to sell.
It's much easier to get people's attention if you're negative.
But is that ultimately productive, being negative?
It is, if you can use the negativity to right wrongs. Come on, even a moron can see that.
In 5 years, the O'Reilly Factor has largely overtaken CNN's Larry King Live as the top-rated primetime news program on cable. And this Sunday, his new book will hit #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. It's called the No Spin Zone, the term he uses to describe his show.
The no spin zone means you come on and talk to me, don't lie. Answer the question. Check yeah, but shoot, wait a minute. You're doing now. You're doing a cha-cha here now, Congressman. This is a no spin zone.
O'Reilly says the anger, the moral indignation, is an outgrowth of a working class sensibility. He's just looking out for the little guy, whose tastes he shares right down to the regular Joe restaurants he chooses.
Do you feel that you need to come here?
Sure. This is my, not just the coffee shop here, but the whole working class America. Wherever I go, I seek that out.
If he's blue collar, he's the richest member of the group, with an annual salary somewhere north of $4 million. So, is it an act?
Once you get the success, you get the money, you get the prestige, you're not them anymore.
But that's not true. Just because I earn a large salary doesn't mean that I have to change my lifestyle, the way I think, my point of view, my friends. I don't have to do that. I'm not the Jeffersons moving on up to the East Side, okay? I don't care about the East Side.
Well, maybe O'Reilly's proof that money can't buy happiness. Because one thing's for sure, he's still got the anger.
What are you angry about?
Well, I'm angry about a number of things. Centrally, that the people who make this country work, the millions of people get up at 6 in the morning, get home at 6 at night, they don't have a lot of power. And the people that they give power to represent them, more often than not, sell them out. That really tees me off. This is un-American and corrupt, in my opinion. Where am I wrong?
Come on, cute. And there does seem to be a pattern to whom O'Reilly chooses to attack. Here's O'Reilly on Bill Clinton.
Every despot in history did some good things. I'm saying this man's flat out corrupt. That's what I'm saying. Am I wrong? More evidence that Jesse Jackson.
Reverend Jesse Jackson is another favorite target. He's never actually appeared on the show, but that hasn't deterred O'Reilly, who regularly slams Jackson and his various organizations over their finances.
56 segments you did on Jesse Jackson. Does he really warrant it? Is he that bad a guy?
The reason we did so many segments is that we had to get this in dribs and drabs. We couldn't get it all at once.
Why doesn't it mean that you're a liberal basher if you can't point to a conservative that you did the same thing to?
Tom DeLay.
56 segments?
Didn't do 56. We blew him out of the water.
O'Reilly accused House Republican whip Tom DeLay of allegedly offering meetings with government officials in exchange for campaign donations.
We asked Congressman DeLay to come on the factor, but he declined, however.
It's unclear whether Bill O'Reilly was born angry. He remembers a happy childhood on New York's Long Island. After college and grad school, he went to work in TV.
But it was the oil embargo in the mid-70s.
Local stations, the networks, including ABC, and finally the tabloid show Inside Edition.
Time now for Morgana, the kissing bandit.
Then, in 1996, he was chosen to play the angry guy on the fledgling Fox News channel. Call it typecasting.
No, you're pressuring these guys. You're hurting these guys. Did John Ashcroft have to be attacked?
Bill, can I say this?
Much of O'Reilly's appeal stems from a deep cynicism, a belief that many of the nation's institutions are broken or just plain bad. Take the drug problem. Because it hasn't adopted his remedy, O'Reilly says the government just doesn't care.
If it were as simple as sending people to rehab, being tough on sellers, don't you think the government would have done it?
No.
Why?
They don't care.
Come on. They're in the business of caring about that issue.
Yeah, sure they are. What are you, Little Bo Peep? They don't care about it at all because it doesn't impact them in Georgetown. Not a lot of heroin in Beverly Hills. So why am I always right here?
In the end, for all his bravado and bombast, O'Reilly realizes the real key to success is credibility.
You think you're wonderful. You tell the truth and you're honest.
More important than being seen as the champion of the working class or as the angriest man on television, Bill O'Reilly wants to be known for one thing, being fair.
I'm going to give you the last word. I think I'm fair. If I'm not fair, hit me with it. Here I am, Cuomo. Let me have it.
That's why they call him Bill O'Reilly. You can read an excerpt from the No Spin Zone or chat with O'Reilly online. And for details, go to abcnews.com.
Sebastian Younger takes us inside the caves where the Afghan fighters hide. A prehistoric-looking encampment.
This is one of the sleeping areas. They built up rocks around it to protect them from the wind.
Dispatches from the front when Primetime returns.
And now, author of The Perfect Storm, Sebastian Younger, on special assignment in Afghanistan. This week, exploring the caves where fighters live and hide, and why Osama bin Laden may be so hard to find.
We were told there were caves hidden here in the mountains, just 30 miles north of Kabul. We cross a rickety footbridge and climb a hillside seeded with landmines. We are mindful of every step. Eventually, we reach a secret place this man says he has used for years to hide and to fight. In the 1980s, he hid here to fight Soviet soldiers, and now he uses it as a last-ditch defense against the Taliban. Inside, a maze of passageways. One opening leads to another, and then another. Soon we come upon an extraordinary sight, an encampment that looks like it could go back to the Stone Age.
This is one of the sleeping areas. They built up rocks around it to protect them from the wind. Behind that is the bomb shelter. It goes way, way back into the mountainside.
It is a kind of self-sufficient underground village. And there is more, another passageway that leads even deeper into the mountain.
The cave just keeps going. It goes way, way back in there.
It is a tunnel, and it seems to have no end. These caves are impressive. When you are in here, it really makes you wonder if Osama bin Laden is hiding in caves. Could any bombs really penetrate the mountain above?
You can read more of Sebastian Junger's dispatches from Afghanistan at abcnews.com. And that's it for us tonight. Don't forget, Good Morning America tomorrow from the USS Enterprise. I'm Diane Sawyer. Good day.
We'll be on board tomorrow morning. And a reminder, Friday evening, 8 p.m. Eastern, Peter Jennings will have an edition of our new ABC News magazine, America 01. See you in the morning. Have a good night.
This has been a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source.
Tom Cruise, Mission Impossible, Saturday on ABC.
High school students in Anderson County take their